What scares you the most? Could it be the dark? Or what might be lurking inside it? There's something I find bizarrely compelling about fear. No matter how it utterly grips me and sends chills down my spine, I chase it. Although I remember when I was growing up, there was almost no way I could even sit through a horror movie. I wanted to run, literally. I could feel the adrenaline throughout my entire body, but something in the back of my mind wouldn't let me turn my back on these fears. And my curiosity eventually got the best of me. The first scary movie I was able to watch, start to finish, was The Sixth Sense, starring Bruce Die Hard Willis and a very young Haley Joel Osment. He would eventually voice Sora in English versions of Kingdom Hearts games. Just in case you don't know who Haley Joel Osment is. Believe me when I tell you, seeing a movie where a kid faces unspeakable horror gave me so much courage when I was a kid myself.
No more shivers and shakes in my leg bones, not
And ever since then, I have been obsessed or addicted or both with various horror franchises and media. Today, I want to talk about Resident Evil. In 1996, Resident Evil was released on the original Sony PlayStation. I call this OG the PS1, but whatever. Resident Evil is on television screens at all hours of the night. The world is meeting Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, and Albert Wesker for the first time ever. And...
What is this? Wow! What a mansion! Okay, let me handle this. Stay alert!
Barry?
What is it?
Watch out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of this. What is it?
Okay, so the original Resident Evil is a little dated in the year 2022. But let's just say you astral project your mind back to 1996. This at least looks approximately realistic. I mean, just imagine it's a hot summer night, you have a plate full of pizza or nachos, a can full of your favorite soda. You and your variable family member are huddled in close for this. You'll find out pretty quickly, this game is about survival. You play as an elite STARS member, Chris or Jill, and your job is to not die. You and the rest of Alpha Team have just been sent into the Arklay Mountains, but while searching for Bravo Team, one horrible thing leads to another, and you become stranded in a spooky mansion. I need to be real. When they invent time travel in real life, do not be alarmed when I Marty McFly myself back to the late 90s. I can't even imagine what it was like back then to be thrust into this kind of science fiction. Zombies, monster dogs, weird reptilian claw demons, and friggin' booby traps. The mansion is a maze of a maze, filled to the brim with puzzles and nightmarish enemies. And if all of that was incredible, back in 1996, it was basically unbelievable what was accomplished just 6 years later when Capcom released Resident Evil Remake.
What is this place?
Not quite your ordinary house, that's for sure.
Hey, Whisker, where's Chris?
Jill, no! You don't want to go back out there.
If you knew how absurdly good this remake is when you compare it to the original, you would get it. To be honest, the GameCube remake is nearly one for one a faithful recreation of the PS1 game. The remake's aim was to modernize the game in 2002 using better hardware, but also to expand on the vision of the original. There are entire segments added into the remake which didn't come at the cost of any original segments. They kept the ink ribbons with limited saves, and I am still so grateful for this decision. There are remixed portions that will completely throw an original player off guard, but still reward them for having previously acquired knowledge from the old version. And if you never played the old game, Remake will give you an authentic experience that I think actually rivals the original one. How does Remake relate to fear, though? Approximately realistic looks a whole lot closer to actually realistic in this game. If any of the encounters in PS1 Resident Evil made you panic, fumble with your inventory, or run straight back through the door you just came through, you can expect that feeling, except multiplied exponentially in Remake. Many of the enemies and their placements are brought over from the original, but then you can never feel too secure because there are even new versions of zombies. Crimson Heads show us what happens when a zombie corpse is left lying in the mansion for too long. One of the greatest new mechanics in Remake is the disposal of zombie bodies, or destroying them so they can't come back as Crimson Heads. For me, this adds so much to the combat. Not only are you trying to kill the zombies, you also have to keep in mind you need to burn them, or else Crimson Heads will show up and your game gets way harder. Just like in the original game, Chris and Jill are not just skins for the player, but they're actually different characters with different abilities. Like for instance, Chris can take more damage than Jill before a game over, but Jill has 8 inventory slots where Chris only has 6. Personally, I love that there's an incentive to try both characters, whether it's to see the different events play out or just challenge yourself with a different playstyle. But no matter who you pick, you are tasked with surviving the mansion, solving puzzles, and finding a way to regroup with as many of your teammates as possible. It really starts to feel like every action in Resident Evil has its own consequences. Without majorly spoiling anything, I can tell you that it's possible to escape the game with many survivors or just all by yourself. Today, Resident Evil is a massive franchise with several sequels, spin-offs, and even those whack movies, if you're into those. Sometimes I really wish we could go back to when this was Resident Evil. I'm a fan of the newer games, but there's a beautiful darkness and fear in the originals, and Remake, which is just lost today. The most recent Resident Evil games are kind of like a return to form, trying to put horror in front of the action, but it's just not the same as it used to be. Playing Resident Evil can feel like a cold sweat, tension that builds up in your spine and makes your hairs stand up. I have played and completed Resident Evil 1 old and new many times, yet they still give me the same dreadful feelings. That shock of being ambushed by a room full of enemies, completely unprepared. The frantic scramble to find ammo or healing. And don't even get me started on picking up and storing key items just to forget where they belong and realizing you wasted 30 minutes walking around the wrong half of the wrong floor of the mansion. Listen, if Resident Evil is going to teach you anything, it's that your time is valuable. Resident Evil exemplifies the survival horror genre. The gameplay is intrinsically connected to the horror. In this game, you must practice resource management as well as situational and spatial awareness. Literally, one bad move and it could cost you precious ammo, healing, or worse, serious time and progress. I promise you, if you have to replay large segments just because you messed up a save, nightmares. You will have Resident Evil nightmares. Sorry, it's not my rule. All jokes aside, there was a time when Resident Evil Remake was too stressful for me to complete. Which is why I think it's totally fair if you're asking yourself,
what is supposed to be fun about all of this?
And to answer that question, I want to take everybody toward the midpoint of the game. You find yourself in this guest house, and in order to make progress, you need to solve a puzzle. This is a liquid mixing puzzle where you have to learn the values of each liquid and then follow a formula to create a serum. This was an incredible moment in the game for me because I actually wrote down this crazy formula in real life just to make the puzzle simpler to solve. Even if you don't use anything to help you with the puzzle, it's just a gratifying feeling in this game. Many of the original puzzles turn out to just be take A and bring it to B, but Remake includes ones like these that actually give you a challenge. The joy of completing the puzzles is also multiplied by the fact you had to survive literal monsters to get here. Needless to say, Resident Evil dug its claws into me deep. Searching the mansion, collecting items, fighting zombies, and gradually unlocking this puzzle box of a game. There's just something so satisfying about reaching the conclusion, and I hope that this video inspires somebody to pick up the game and complete it for the first time. It is good, but I feel like the charm and the value of the old original Resident Evils is being somewhat overshadowed by where the series has gone. Things like Resident Evil being the first game where the character you chose actually changed the story of the campaign and actually changed how you played the game. It just feels a bit deeper than a standard character select because you're committing to an entire horror experience. If anything, you're stepping into the shoes of this person and seeing how they make it through this nightmare. In Resident Evil, I feel connected to my character because their survival is like my survival. You know, I want to see Jill and Chris make it out. I want to see them succeed. And the best part is that it gives me a reason to play the game 2 times. And that's what I was saying. Because the characters are different, you have a reason to play more than once. Resident Evil is the first thing I think of when I think of horror and fear. And the cool part is that it's different for everybody. Thankfully, we live in a world with a full tree of horrifying and wonderful pieces of art that are meant to give us fear. Resident Evil Original and its remake treat the player with maturity. Nothing is gonna pop out screaming, waving its arms wildly, hoping to make you throw your controller. Nah. Resident Evil shows restraint, and there's this looming feeling that you're never really secure. This game teaches you that your time is delicate and valuable. And if that isn't an awesome life lesson to take from the game, then I don't know what is.